Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Daily updates, daily receipts, and daily consistency. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the family, because we get straight into the real stories that everyone else tries to water down. Now let's talk about what has erupted around Diddy in the last 48 hours. Because this situation has taken a turn that even his biggest defenders did not see coming. So, the conversation dominating social media and the legal world right now is the possibility of Diddy facing even more criminal charges. And this time it's not rumors, not whispers, but actual federal-level accusations connected to witness tampering. And let me tell you, this is extremely serious. This isn't the usual PR dramas he's been dodging. This is a whole different battlefield. What's unfolding right now really exposes that the entire trial we saw before may not have been what we thought it was. The more information that comes out, the more it feels like we were watching a controlled performance, a show trial, instead of an honest pursuit of justice. According to new reports, one of the key people in this explosive development is Diddy's former chef, Jordan Chatuan. She worked closely in his household, she saw things, she experienced things, and she quietly took her information straight to the grand jury. She cooperated directly with the prosecution's team, thinking her identity and her involvement were protected. But clearly, someone in Diddy's circle caught wind of it, and that's where things get extremely messy. Diddy's longtime assistant, Neil Dominique, is being dragged into this storm as the person who allegedly exposed Jordan's cooperation to others on Diddy's side. And doing that, letting people know a witness is secretly giving testimony, is not just inappropriate. It is not just unethical. It is witness tampering, full stop. It completely undermines the integrity of the process and can derail an entire case. And by all accounts, that's exactly what happened. Her safety, her privacy, and the grand jury's confidentiality were compromised, and it fundamentally altered the outcome of the trial. Now listen, I have always believed that Diddy was guilty of the major charges that mysteriously fell apart. The RICO allegations and the sex trafficking connected to Cassie. These were not small accusations. They were the foundation of the entire case. And yet somehow he slid out of those charges while other, much smaller things stuck. When you combine that with what we now know, the witness tampering, the jurors with shocking biases, as shown in the Netflix documentary, and the behind-the-scenes maneuvering, it paints an extremely troubling picture. Then add in the footage we previously saw of Diddy insisting that he had to control every narrative, every headline, every story. Those videos weren't just someone venting. They were glimpses into how deeply calculated this man was about shaping public perception and protecting himself at all costs. When you put all these puzzle pieces together, the conclusion becomes hard to avoid. This wasn't just arrogance, it was strategy. And now, because of all of this, Diddy may be facing new federal charges. Not rumors, not online theories, but actual potential federal witness tampering charges that could reopen everything. This isn't just bad news, this is catastrophic. Witness tampering at the federal level is one of the charges prosecutors take the most seriously because it strikes at the very core of the justice system. And if they can prove that Diddy's team interfered with witnesses or tried to influence testimony, that opens the door to new indictments, reopened investigations, and a whole new chapter in this saga. It's wild to think about how quickly this is escalating, but honestly, it also makes sense. You can't hide the truth forever. People talk. Evidence comes out. And the moment one domino falls, the rest start collapsing with it. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think these new developments will finally be the turning point? Do you think Diddy will actually face these charges head-on? Or will more people come forward now that the cracks are showing?
Wie auch immer, Neil. Hey, mein Name ist Chatuan. Du kennst mich nicht, aber du hast Puff meinen Namen gegeben und ihm gesagt, dass mich die Behörden kontaktierten, bevor ich mit meiner Familie sprach. Du hast mein Leben in Gefahr gebracht. Du hast ihm die Adressen einiger Leute gegeben. Im Fall hast du dich tatsächlich in die Angelegenheiten anderer Opfer eingemischt und dich wie deren Freund auftrat. Wie auch immer, ich wollte nur sicher gehen, denn es war klar, dass du den Scheck angenommen hast. Wie viel war es? Kannst du es uns sagen? Kannst du uns sagen, wie viel es war? Wie auch immer. Du hast die Rechnung bekommen und es ging dir dort ganz klar gut. Und ich möchte nur sicherstellen, dass du es dir nicht zu bequem gemacht hast und bereit bist, auf die eine oder andere Weise dafür zu bezahlen, dass wir unser Leben in Gefahr gebracht haben.
Oh my goodness. The last 48 hours around Diddy have been absolutely chaotic. This isn't just another leak, another rumor, Another emotional meltdown from his PR squad. No, this is something else entirely. This is criminal. This is federal. This is evidence-based. And this is the kind of thing that flips a case upside down. Let's get straight into it. So, the conversation dominating social media and legal commentary right now is that Diddy is suddenly staring down fresh criminal charges. And these aren't the kind of charges you wiggle out of with clever lawyers, fast settlements, or emotional speeches in the courtroom. These are federal witness tampering charges, the kind of allegations that don't just add time to a sentence, but reopen entire investigations, invalidate previous court decisions, and shatter whatever remaining PR shield a celebrity thinks they have. In the past 48 hours, everything has shifted. And it all traces back to one person, Diddy's own former chef. Her name is Jordan Chatuan, and she is the one whose testimony has lit this entire situation on fire. Jordan wasn't just someone who worked around Diddy. She wasn't just someone who saw him a few times in passing. She worked in his space, in his home, around his routine, around his team. And more importantly, she witnessed things that apparently made her uncomfortable enough to cooperate with the prosecution. She took her information directly to the grand jury, privately, quietly, and confidentially. She was helping the federal government build a case. She thought she was protected. She thought her involvement was sealed. But clearly, someone in Diddy's inner circle was playing both sides. That someone, according to what is coming out now, is Neil Dominique, one of Diddy's closest assistants, someone who had been around him for years, someone who handled logistics, someone who dealt with sensitive information, someone who, according to these allegations, became a bridge between the prosecution and Diddy's defense team through a completely improper channel. And if that is true, we are not talking about a small mistake. We are talking about witness tampering, direct sabotage of a legal process, and a deliberate attempt to interfere with justice. That accusation alone could send anyone, celebrity or not, straight into a much harsher legal reality. The wild part is how casually and boldly this appears to have been done. Jordan released a public statement addressing Neil directly, and her words are heavy. Heavy in tone, heavy in accusation, heavy in meaning. And honestly, the more you read it, the more you realize how dangerous the situation was for her and for other witnesses. She said in her own words, "Why were you comfortable putting my life in danger? Why were you comfortable putting everyone else's life in danger? Why did you expose me to Diddy when you knew exactly what that meant?" She accuses Neil of giving Diddy information about multiple witnesses, not just her. She accuses him of passing along addresses, private conversations, cooperation details, and internal updates. That is the type of behavior that absolutely destroys the fairness of a trial. It creates fear. It intimidates witnesses. It gives a defendant access to information they are not supposed to have. But the part that struck everyone online, the part that made this go viral, was when she asked him if he was a double agent. And honestly, that's exactly what it sounds like. Someone who seems to be cooperating with the legal system on one side, while simultaneously funneling that information back to the defendant. That is the definition of witness tampering. That is obstruction. That is interference with federal proceedings. And those are crimes that prosecutors don't look the other way on. Because once you compromise witness safety or grand jury confidentiality, you compromise the entire justice system. Now let's talk about the broader implications here, because this situation doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's actually part of a pattern, a long-standing pattern of Diddy allegedly trying to control every narrative, every witness, every storyline, and every person involved in his cases. Remember those videos that surfaced before his arrest? The ones where he's pacing around, shouting, demanding that his team lock down the narrative? That wasn't just someone having a bad day. That was someone obsessed with controlling the outcome of his legal problems. Someone who understands how powerful public opinion is. Someone who knows that if he loses control of the story, he loses everything. And when you pair that mentality with allegations that members of his team were exposing witnesses and communicating with jurors, suddenly it all makes sense. Diddy wasn't just fighting a legal battle. He was playing chess behind the scenes. Let's talk about the juror situation for a moment, because people keep brushing this off, but it matters. It matters a lot. The Netflix documentary revealed that certain jurors had shocking biases. One in particular, Juror 160, literally said she wished she personally knew Diddy. She watched his shows. She liked him. She made flirty little comments during jury selection. And somehow, she was allowed onto the jury. Think about that. If you are on trial for extremely serious charges that could destroy your life, The last thing you want is someone on the jury who is a fan of yours. That is not a fair juror. That is not an impartial juror. That is someone predisposed to doubt the prosecution and trust the celebrity. And yet she got through. How? How does a juror like that slip through unless the system is already leaning toward the celebrity? Unless someone is rooting for him behind the scenes? Unless someone is influencing things that are supposed to be unbiased? And when you pair that with what's happening now, the leaked messages, the statements, the accusations of double agents, it paints the clearest picture possible. The original trial was absolutely, undeniably compromised. It explains why Diddy walked away from those huge charges, the RICO allegations, the sex trafficking accusations, the conspiracy claims. Charges that could have put him away for decades. Charges that would have resulted in asset seizure. Charges that could have permanently ended his empire. Instead, he walked away with a sentence that barely reflects the gravity of what he was accused of. 2 to 4 years. 2 to 4 years for a mountain of allegations, years of testimonies, stories from dozens of people, and a lifestyle that multiple witnesses described as violent, manipulative, secretive, and dangerous. So yes, when people call it a show trial, they're not exaggerating. They're not being dramatic. They're pointing out a pattern: biased jurors, compromised witnesses, double agents, and a defendant obsessed with controlling the narrative. Now let's circle back to Jordan's statement, because this is where things get truly disturbing. She explains that when Neil exposed her cooperation, it wasn't just a betrayal. It was a threat to her safety. She says flat out that she no longer feels safe. And she says she wanted Neil to feel uncomfortable too, because he put her in danger. She highlights the fact that anyone connected to the case could be harmed simply for speaking up. Her statement reads like someone who is afraid, not just of retaliation, but of a system that didn't protect her. A system that let someone leak her identity. A system that allowed interference without consequences. And that is what has sparked this new legal wildfire. Because if federal prosecutors believe she's telling the truth, if they believe there was witness tampering, then everything gets reopened. Everything gets re-examined. Everything gets reinvestigated. Witness tampering doesn't just add new charges, it voids old outcomes. It voids plea deals. It voids sentencing decisions. It voids trial results. It voids everything. And on top of that, witness tampering is the type of charge that federal prosecutors love to pursue because it's clean, it's direct, and it's easy to prove if there are messages, phone calls, or witness testimony. And we already know that the Bureau of Prisons has caught Diddy trying to communicate secretly with people outside, collecting phones from other inmates, sneaking messages out, contacting his sons through illegal channels, and violating communication protocols repeatedly. The judge even denied bail because they believed he would immediately start tampering again if freed. This is a pattern. An undeniable pattern. And if the feds can prove even a fraction of this, Diddy could be facing new charges and new trial extensions to his sentence, complete asset seizure, revocation of privileges, and potentially decades more in prison. This isn't small. This isn't gossip. This is the kind of legal crisis that changes everything. And we're only scratching the surface here. There are also things happening around people like Kella Harper, who appeared in the Netflix documentary acting emotional, conflicted, and reflective. Yet she completely omitted the fact that she was allegedly paid by Diddy at one point. She didn't mention her own history of cooperating with him, running statements for him, or working against other accusers. She didn't discuss any of that. She gave a sanitized version of events that conveniently erased her role in protecting Diddy's public image. Why not mention it? Why hide that? Because it makes her look like exactly what Jordan accused Neil of being, another double agent. And the more this conversation expands, the more double agents appear. People who said one thing in public, another thing behind the scenes, and a completely different thing to the feds. And this is exactly the kind of chaos Diddy operated through for years. A network of people who simultaneously protected him, defended him, lied for him, covered for him, and then sat in front of cameras pretending they were victims of manipulation without acknowledging how they contributed to it. The web is huge. The connections are messy. And every time someone pulls a thread, more unravels. Now let's talk about something else that people online have been dissecting. The judge. Judge Arun repeatedly denied Diddy's bail requests. And at the time, people were saying it was harsh, unfair, too aggressive, maybe even personal. But now that we know there were ongoing concerns about witness tampering, the bail denials make perfect sense. The Bureau of Prisons said he tried to get phones. They said he was making unauthorized calls. They said he was using other inmates to communicate. They said he was trying to manipulate his narrative even from inside a federal facility. So when the judge said that releasing Diddy would pose a significant risk to the integrity of the legal process, he wasn't exaggerating. He was right. The man has allegedly been tampering the entire time. People keep asking, why didn't Diddy get life? Why didn't his assets get seized? Why did the biggest charges fall apart? Well, this is your answer. This is the missing puzzle piece. This is the corruption people couldn't put their finger on until now. Bias, tampering, leaks, double agents, jurors who shouldn't have been selected, assistants passing along secret information, witnesses compromised before they ever testified. That's how a man accused of RICO, sex trafficking, and conspiracy ends up with a sentence that looks like a slap on the wrist. But now that the truth is surfacing, everything is shifting. These new allegations could undo everything. And Diddy knows this, which is why, according to several reports, he has been panicking behind the scenes in prison, trying to control the flow of information even more aggressively. And we're not done. There's also the issue of Christina KK Coram, someone the judge himself called part of Diddy's organized crime network. She wasn't even charged in the case, yet her name is everywhere in the documents, everywhere in the testimonies, everywhere in the allegations. But somehow, she slipped through without facing charges. How? Why? What deals were made? What information was exchanged? What role did she play in the bigger picture? These are questions that will now be reopened because witness tampering affects everyone connected to the case. And don't forget Lil Rod. His lawsuit is active right now, his discovery phase is ongoing right now, and his allegations are some of the most detailed and specific we've ever seen. He's naming names. He has receipts. He has timelines. And with the spotlight now shifting back onto witness tampering, his case gains even more weight. Because if you can prove tampering in one case, it becomes easier to prove it in others. This is why people are saying the next 8 to 9 months are going to be explosive. This is why legal analysts are suddenly re-examining everything. This is why Diddy's PR team has basically gone silent. This is why the internet is talking about nothing else. This is big, bigger than people realize. And when you really sit back and look at how all of these pieces were moving behind the scenes, it becomes painfully clear that this wasn't just chaos or coincidence. This was calculated. Because as soon as the prosecutors realized that something wasn't adding up in the timeline of testimony, everything began to unravel. And now, with this new revelation about how the assistant allegedly interfered with a grand jury witness, you can almost see the dominoes falling in slow motion. What's wild is that Jordan wasn't some random outsider. She wasn't a blogger, she wasn't a fan, she wasn't a former employee bitter about a paycheck. She was someone who lived in that household, someone who saw the day-to-day energy, the dynamics, the orders, the late-night calls, the environments Diddy created and curated. She lived through the culture of yes men, the unspoken rules, and the kind of pressure that keeps people quiet. So when she finally went and quietly spoke to the grand jury, that wasn't an accident. That was someone who had reached their breaking point. That was someone who could no longer hold in what they had seen or experienced. But the moment Diddy's inner circle found out, it was game over. Because what Jordan did, speaking behind the scenes, speaking to prosecutors, giving detailed information, was the one thing that could shatter the illusion that Diddy had convinced many people to maintain. And instead of letting the legal process unfold, the response from his team was allegedly to interfere, to expose her cooperation, to undermine her credibility, to intimidate her position, and to rupture the integrity of the legal proceedings. And this is where things get much darker. Because when you interfere with a witness, especially in a federal case, you aren't just bending the rules. You're committing a whole new crime. A crime that stands on its own. A crime that the government can prosecute, even if the original charges fail. And that's why this is so dangerous for Diddy. Most people don't understand this. Witness tampering carries its own sentencing guidelines. You don't need a conviction on the original case for tampering to stick. You don't need the jury to agree with the underlying allegations. The tampering itself is the crime. And what's making this situation even more explosive is the timing. The fact that this is surfacing after the Netflix documentary, after that juror came out exposing the bias, after the behind-the-scenes footage of Diddy scrambling to control every narrative, everything is lining up in a way that's almost too perfect. It paints the picture of a man who wasn't just defending himself legally, but trying to shape outcomes, influence perception, and silence information before it could be used against him. This is why I keep saying, If the prosecution now opens a new federal case on him, this isn't about Cassie anymore. It isn't about civil settlements. It isn't about PR optics. This is about interference with the justice system, one of the biggest red flags the feds look for. And if there's one thing the federal government cannot stand, it's a defendant who thinks they can manipulate their process. Now zoom out for a second and look at the pattern. Because once you connect the dots, the story becomes chilling. Assistants covering things up, employees pressured into silence, internal loyalty systems, people afraid to speak, sudden NDAs, people being checked when they step out of line, and now witness tampering. This isn't some isolated moment of panic. This is a culture that was built over decades. A culture where people learned quickly that telling the truth could cost them everything. And that's why Jordan coming forward in the way she did is so important. She wasn't just giving testimony, she was breaking a decades-long cycle. And the reaction from Diddy's team confirms exactly why so few employees ever spoke out before. Because when power is built on fear, people stay quiet. When influence is built on secrecy, people fall in line. And when the person in control is someone who has been dodging allegations for nearly 30 years, the machine around him becomes incredibly sophisticated. But here's where everything finally cracks. When you start interfering with the government's process, you take the battle out of your own hands. Diddy's legal team could argue, debate, and cross-examine the initial allegations. But you cannot PR spin tampering. You cannot brand manage interference with a grand jury. You cannot manipulate a process that is designed specifically to catch people who think they are above the rules. And with every new detail coming out, you can see the temperature rising. You can see prosecutors sharpening their focus. You can see investigators revisiting timelines, re-interviewing witnesses, and combing through digital evidence that now has a whole new meaning. Because if Jordan went to the grand jury quietly, there are timestamps. There are call logs. There are digital footprints. There are messages. There are internal communications from Diddy's team reacting in real time. And trust me, the FBI loves timelines. They love patterns. They love behavioral analysis. They love digital trails. And if Neil Dominique or anyone else exposed her cooperation intentionally, if anyone attempted to divert her testimony, if anyone tried to intimidate, interfere, or undermine the grand jury process, then everything Diddy thought he escaped comes right back around with twice the force. Because the justice system does not like to be played. And the federal government, especially in cases involving conspiracy, trafficking, or RICO-like activity, will use tampering as the entry point to open wider investigations. And that's why this feels so different. This doesn't feel like gossip. This doesn't feel like bloggers chasing a narrative. This doesn't feel like online speculation. This feels like the beginning of a second wave, a legal wave that might actually stick. And as this investigation widens, something fascinating is happening. People who once swore they would never talk are suddenly stepping forward. It's subtle, it's quiet, it's happening in whispers, but it's happening. Former employees, contractors, assistants, people who were connected through the industry pipeline, they're starting to respond to subpoenas differently. They're starting to cooperate. Because once the government frames something as witness tampering, anyone who stays silent begins to look complicit. And nobody wants to go down for someone who may not protect them when the pressure becomes real. That shift alone should terrify Diddy more than any headline or documentary ever could. Because it signals something crucial. Fear is no longer enough to control the room. And once fear dissolves, truth starts to leak. And let's be very clear, the truth doesn't leak quietly. It spills. It pours out. And once it starts, you cannot contain it. People forget that what brought down massive criminal networks in history wasn't always the primary crime, it was the cover-up. It was the interference. It was the attempt to silence someone who wasn't supposed to speak. That's what made the government say, "All right, now we're involved." That's what transformed messy situations into federal storms. And the exact same blueprint is unfolding here. So when you take Jordan's quiet testimony, add Neil Dominique allegedly revealing it, add the cracks shown in the Netflix documentary, add Diddy's own recorded desire to control every narrative, add the inconsistencies in juror behavior, add the internal panic his team experienced before his arrest. Suddenly you have the outline of a structure that was never meant to be exposed. And if prosecutors reopen the door based on tampering, everything else that once seemed resolved is back on the table. Every settlement, every prior allegation, every loose end people thought had been tied away years ago. Tampering doesn't just reopen a case. It invites the government to start tracing the roots of a bigger pattern. And the pattern is long. It's complex, it's interconnected, and it spans decades. This is why so many legal analysts are saying that Diddy might actually be in more danger now than he ever was during the original case. Because while he may have dodged certain charges then, he cannot dodge the implications of interference now. Even the most powerful celebrity lawyers in the world cannot erase the digital footprint of witness manipulation. There are timestamps. There are call logs. There are communications. There are actions that cannot be undone. And the one thing federal prosecutors are trained to detect is behavior that signals consciousness of guilt, meaning actions you only take when you know the truth is damaging. And Diddy's team leaving a trail of behavior that looks like panic suppression, scrambling, meddling, and intimidation is the kind of thing prosecutors eat alive in court. You can tell jurors anything you want about the original allegations. They can argue, debate, question, disagree. But when they're presented with evidence that someone tampered with a witness, that someone altered the natural course of justice, that someone interfered with the government's own process, there's no gray area. There's no PR. There's no misunderstanding. There's only guilt or innocence, and the evidence speaks loud. The part people underestimate is how much prosecutors love to make an example out of high-profile figures who try to manipulate the system. It sends a message: your fame cannot shield you. Your money cannot control us. Your influence cannot rewrite the truth. And right now, the truth is creeping back up into the spotlight whether Diddy likes it or not. Because this is bigger than a scandal, bigger than tabloid headlines, bigger than documentaries. This is about the integrity of a federal process being violated. And that is the kind of thing that wakes the system up. So where does this leave Diddy? Honestly, in a very dangerous place. Because if these new allegations of witness tampering are officially formalized, it means the clock resets. It means the government gets a second wind. And it means people who once hid behind settlements and silence may finally see an opening to speak without fear. Because nothing exposes power like seeing that power lose control. And right now, Diddy's entire empire looks like it's sliding out of his hands. Employees are talking. Prosecutors are circling. Investigators are reviewing evidence with a new lens. Jurors' behavior is under review. The Netflix documentary added gasoline to the fire. And this tampering accusation might be the match that lights everything up all over again. So as the walls close in, the biggest question becomes, can Diddy survive a federal witness tampering case? Because historically, most people don't. This is not a slap-on-the-wrist offense. It's not a PR problem. It's not a misunderstanding. It's federal. It's serious. And it's the one charge nobody ever wants attached to their name. So as we watch this develop over the next few weeks, understand one thing. This is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of the real story. Because once you cross the line into interfering with a witness, the justice system does not forget. It does not forgive. And it does not look the other way. It responds. And when it responds, everything you thought you buried comes straight back to the surface. Fire closing, same channel intro/outro style you requested. Hey guys, thank you for sticking with me through this breakdown. If you made it all the way to the end, you already know. This situation is unraveling faster than anyone expected, and the truth is finally catching up. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join the community because this case is getting darker, deeper, and more explosive by the day. And I will keep you updated every step of the way with consistent, daily analysis you won't find anywhere else. Stay locked in, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video.